But yeah, and our son has, he's all of his, not all of his friends, but a lot of his friends that he hangs out with are all on the mountain bike team for Eagle. And
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting for October 17th, 2024. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. The commissioners who are present for this meeting are here at City Hall, and I don't think we have anybody on Zoom tonight. We also have staff from the city attorney's and the city clerk's office, as well as the city planning department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting, however, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. If you simply want to watch the meeting, we encourage you to watch it on the streaming on our city's YouTube channel. You can access it at meridiancity.org/live. With that, let's begin with roll call. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Garrett,
Here.
Commissioner Seal,
Here.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Sandoval,
Present.
Chairperson Lorcher.
Here. Okay, the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. There are no changes to tonight's agenda, but please keep in mind that item number 5, Pine 43 West, will be open for the sole purpose of continuance. So if there's anybody here tonight to testify for that application, we will not be taking public testimony for this evening. Could I get a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And we have several items on it to approve the meetings from October 3rd, Planning and Zoning, facts, findings, and conclusions of laws for Cedar Springs Animal Care Facility, Meridian OZ Subdivision, and Ziggy's Coffee. Could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved and second to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I would like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and our unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff's comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant is finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called only once during public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website or in advance to testify. You may come to the microphones and chambers, or you will be unmuted in Zoom. Please state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or a presentation for the meeting, it will be displayed on the screen and our clerk will help run the presentation. If you've established that you are speaking on behalf of a HOA or another larger group, where others from your group have allowed you to speak on your behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite anyone else in chambers or on Zoom to testify. If you wish to speak on a topic, you may come forward, or on Zoom, press the raise hand button. Or if you're only listening on a phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you're listening on multiple devices, such as a computer and a phone, please be sure to mute those extra devices so we don't experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you are finished, the commission does not have any questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, we will not call on you a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have an opportunity to discuss and hopefully make a final decision or recommendation to City Council as needed. So to start today's applications, I would like to open the public hearing for H 2024-0038 Pine 43 West for the sole purpose of a continuance. Madam Clerk, what dates do we have available?
Madam Chair, November 7th.
May I get a motion to continue the application for November 7th?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to continue Pine 43 West for a conditional use permit for November 7th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So tonight, we are actually going to do something a little bit different in regard to the Treasure Valley Athletic Center. They have 2 applications, item number 0003 and 0033. And we're going to do both of those together because I believe all of the information pertains to both at the same time. So we will begin with the staff report for Treasure Valley Athletic Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. The applications before you tonight are a request for a conditional use permit modification and a development agreement modification. This site consists of 2.12 acres of land. It's owned IL, light industrial, and is located at 1251 and the southern portion of 1250 East Piper Court, south of East Franklin Road and west of South Locust Grove Road. This property was annexed back in 1997 as part of the larger Metamont subdivision with the requirement of a development agreement. A conditional use permit was later approved in 2003 for an indoor soccer recreation facility on the subject property in the IL zoning district. A property boundary adjustment application was recently tentatively approved between the subject property and the budding property to the north to shift the shared property line an additional 75 feet to the north to accommodate the proposed expansion. And that is as shown on the record of survey before you there. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is general industrial. The development agreement modification request is as shown. The applicant is proposing a modification to the existing development agreement to enter into a new agreement for the subject property. The following modifications are proposed to the existing DA provisions. Removal of provision number 4E, which requires a 20-foot wide landscape buffer easement to be provided adjacent to residential uses. At the time the development agreement was adopted, the abutting property to the west was zoned R40 and was planned to develop with residential uses. Subsequently, the property was rezoned to CG and developed with a mix of commercial and office, non-residential uses. Staff agrees with excluding this provision from the new agreement as there is no longer a need for the buffer. The next modification is to the special setback requirements in provision number 4P to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet as there's no longer a need for a buffer to residential uses. The 10-foot buffer will ensure structures don't encroach in the irrigation pipe easement depicted on the plat. Staff recommends the minimum side yard building setback of 5 feet per story is also removed because it's not required in the IL district. All other setbacks shall be required as noted in the Unified Development Code. And lastly, removal of provision 4S pertaining to maximum lot coverage, which limits the building footprint to no more than 50% of the building lot. Staff agrees with excluding this provision from the new agreement as current code has no restriction on lot coverage. Staff has reviewed all other provisions in the development agreement and does not recommend any other provisions are carried over into the new development agreement. Staff recommends as a provision of the DA that future development generally complies with the site and the landscape plan and conceptual elevations submitted with the subject application and complies with the conditions contained herein. For the conditional use permit modification application, a conditional use permit was approved in 2003, as I mentioned earlier, for an indoor soccer field with accessory uses in the IL zoning district. A modification to the conditional use permit is proposed to expand the use to include a new 14,700 square foot building to the north of the existing building, which will contain sand courts for beach volleyball with a weight and training room and 8 additional parking spaces on the east side of the building. No changes are proposed to the existing building or the site. So this is the existing site plan that was approved with the conditional use permit on the left and the proposed site plan on the right. The existing building is here at the south end of the site. If you can see my cursor, all of this parking area is existing. And this is the new building proposed and the new parking area. The applicant estimates that on a typical day and evening, there will be approximately 30 patrons and 2 employees within the primary building, the south end of the site, and 20 patrons and 2 employees in the secondary building. The primary users of the facility will be people of all ages, and the facility will be used from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday and 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. The heaviest periods of use for the facility are anticipated to be evenings and weekends. Tournaments are held in the existing building, but will not be held in the new building. Off-street parking is required at a minimum of 1 space for every 2,000 square feet of gross floor area. Based on 37,700 square feet, that's for the existing and the proposed building, a minimum of 19 spaces are required for the overall site. A total of 65 spaces are proposed at a ratio of 1 for 580 square feet, exceeding the minimum standard by 46 spaces. The applicant is in the process of completing a shared access and parking easement agreement with the abutting property to the north, Dutchman Motorsports. This will allow cross-access between properties and provide more parking for the proposed use if needed during the heaviest periods of use in the evenings and weekends. Conceptual building elevations were submitted as shown for the proposed single-story building. Building materials consist of vertical and horizontal metal panels, horizontal corrugated metal panels, fiber cement panel accents, and glazing with metal standing seam roof. The final design is required to be consistent with the non-residential design standards for the IL zoning district listed in the Architectural Standards Manual. Written testimony has been received from Eric Hagan, the applicant's representative. He is in agreement with the provisions in the staff report. No other written testimony has been received. The staff is recommending approval for the provisions in the staff report. Staff will stand for any questions. The applicant is here to present tonight.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward? Hi.
Hi,
If you can state your name and address for the record.
Eric Hagan, 280 North 8th Street, number 204, Boise, Idaho.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. The client or the owner of the property is currently using the facility for volleyball, indoor volleyball. There's a need in the valley for indoor beach volleyball. As you know, it gets cold in the winter and most people don't want to be on the beach. So he's been wanting to build this facility and expand his facility for quite some time. And the opportunity came up between him and his neighbor to the north to kind of do a trade and purchase the property. So we've been working along those lines and trying to fit in three beach volleyball sized courts within a pre-engineered metal building. The metal building would match in style to the existing building, creating a cohesiveness to the whole project. And then we'll be working through the design review process to fine tune the front facade, creating some undulation and staying within the design guidelines for Meridian. Other than that, I feel that Ms. Allen did an excellent job of summarizing the project. I don't really have anything else to add to that, but I will stand for questions.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone to testify?
Madam Chair, no one has signed up.
So no one has signed up. Did you want to add anything else or are you good? All right. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and second to close the public hearing on both applications 0003 and 0033. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Kurt, I do have a quick question in regard to this. We are voting on a DA modification and a conditional use permit modification. Is this body the deciding factor, or does the DA modification go on to city council?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Typically, this body is the decision maker for conditional use permits, but in this instance, our code is structured where the conditional use permit is being heard in concert with another application, in this case, a modified development agreement. You're just a recommending body, and the council will make the final decision on both applications, both the conditional use permit and the DA modification. So you'll be recommending to the council on both items.
Okay, thank you very much. I went by here for the first time the other day. I didn't even know where Piper Street was, so that was kind of cool. I'm not a volleyball player, so I guess it's not in my purview, but there's plenty of space out there. That parcel is big enough to be able to accommodate your new building. There was plenty of parking as well. And if it adds an opportunity for more people to get out and be active, I support this project.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Seal?
just two quick questions on the Dutchman Motorsports. Is that a regular kind of 9 to 5, 8 to 5 type business? Do we know?
Commission, yes, that's for what I understand.
Okay. And then on the, I mean, just from the literal picture that we have in front of us, it looks like there's a lot of trees that are going to be taken out. Was tree mitigation part of this application? That's all been taken care of?
This is a condition of approval.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Nothing further.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Smith?
after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the city council of file numbers MCU 2024 0003 and H 2024 0033 as presented in the staff report.
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve the two applications for Treasure Valley Athletic Center. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, the next application we have on the agenda is Sky Ranch subdivision for annexation, rezone, modified development agreement, and a preliminary plat. We will begin with the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. So the applicant is requesting annexation of 20.039 acres of land with R15 zoning, the rezoning of 24.53 acres of land from R4 to R15, modification of an existing development agreement to create a new one to develop the proposed single-family residential development, and preliminary plat consisting of 285 building lots, that's 284 new and 1 existing, 28 common lots, 6 common drives on 43.82 acres of land, zoned R15. These are the exhibits for the annexation and rezone. So in 2015, the city, at the request and consent of the property owners, annexed the property approximately 1,322 acres of land with the R4, R8, R15, and CG zoning districts. It was envisioned that some of the subject properties will seek rezoning consistent with the future land use map designations in the future. At the time, no development was proposed with the subject annexation request, and therefore a vast majority of the property was proposed to be annexed as R4. All of the subject property owners signed a development agreement that was executed upon approval. Within the DA is a requirement that any proposed development plan be reviewed and approved as an amendment to the executed development agreement. Upon development, redevelopment of all these properties in the future, adherence to the characteristics of their prospective land use designations described above will be required. So the annexation of these properties, it was basically a placeholder until the properties came in for development. So this is the portion that is being requested for annexation. This is the portion of the project that is requesting a rezone that is currently R4. And this is the property boundary, the project boundary. So access to this development is proposed from East Lake Hazel Road. Per the Idaho Transportation Department, no direct access to state highway is approved. Due to the proximity of this development to a state highway, ITD is requesting a traffic impact study for the proposed development. Access is also proposed from the east side of the property via a future collector road. This way. Again, as the property is within close proximity to State Highway 69, the applicant will be required to provide noise abatement. Noise abatement could include, but not limited to, a berm or a berm and a wall combination to help reduce traffic noise. And then staff is also concerned that the entrance, the length of the entrance off of East Lake Hazel Road is short, and the potential for traffic to back up when trying to access the site. And this is the entrance off of East Lake Hazel Road. So this is the preliminary plat that they're proposing. They have 6 phasing plans with this to develop this. Landscaping meets the requirement of the UDC. It requires 35-foot wide buffer along entry corridors, North Meridian Road, and 25-foot along arterial roads, like Hazel, and a 20-foot wide buffer along all collector streets. They exceed the open space requirements. It is required for them to have, they are at 17.1%, which we require 15%. They exceed the amenity points requirement. We require 9 for the amount of property that they have, and they provided 30. These are the amenities that they are proposing for their preliminary plat. They also provided some conceptual building elevations. The applicant states that the homes in Sky Ranch will be a mix of different product type, 2-story and single-story detached single-family homes. So the buildings will need to be designed with elevations that create interest through the use of broken planes, windows, and fencation, and produce a rhythm of materials and patterns. Design review is not required for single-family detached structures. However, because the rear and sides of the home facing East Lake Hazel Road will be highly visible, the staff recommends a DA provision requiring elevations that those elevation incorporate articulation through change in two or more of the following modulations: projections, recess, step backs, pop out, bays, abandoned porches, balconies, materials, types, and other integration architectural elements to break up monotonous wall planes and roof lines that are visible from adjacent public streets. Single-story homes are exempt from this requirement. Design review for single-family attached and townhomes will be required to meet the city's architectural standards. Because if a subdivision is put here, staff is asking that they put a mix of different housing types, like with townhomes and single-family attached within the development. So the Rossin lateral resides on a portion of the property, and the applicant is proposing to keep it open. The applicant has also provided a 50-foot egress easement to provide future bridge crossing to connect the parcels to the south. Again, with this current development agreement that they have, there was a provision in the development agreement that said if a rezone application is submitted in the future, the city comprehensive plan and future land map designations for the subject property. Oops. In the way. We will look at that and determine if the rezone that they are requesting is appropriate. So the area that they are asking to rezone is within the mixed-use regional area. So the applicant's current proposal has limited to single-family residential development occupying the majority of the mixed-use designation area and with no internal vehicle or pedestrian connectivity between the two areas, which does not align with the intent of the comprehensive plan for this area. By focusing solely on an inward-facing single-family development, the proposal fails to meet the goal of creating a mixed-use environment that would foster a vibrant, self-sustaining community with neighborhood supportive uses, employment, or retail options nearby. This lack of compliance with the comprehensive plan could raise concerns about whether development will contribute to traffic issues, support a balanced community, or meet long-term growth objectives. So for the mixed-use development, there is a max of 30% of residential units that is allowed, and the rest of it is supposed to be commercial. So the applicant stated that their project will encompass 11.5% of the 219 acres of mixed-use parcels. The parcel has no access to South Meridian Road. It's limited frontage due to the Rossin Canal. And the applicant is proposing that the property to the south will be developed as commercial and make up the development, which will make up the development for the make up the whole of the mixed-use development. But again, for the mixed-use development to be consistent with the plan, they need to demonstrate the following: functional integration. Development must show that even undeveloped parts of the area can be functionally integrated, either immediately or conceptually. The project should prove that all planned components can work together cohesively. Local connectivity is required to limit local trip impacts to the regional network, both for traditional single-family homes and mixed-use areas. So the current proposal lacks such connectivity and is located near a major regional intersection planned for expansion to 7 lanes with additional access restrictions. Although the developer claims the proposal integrates with the surrounding commercial areas, no conceptual plans have been provided to support this claim. It is also supposed to have outward-facing design. The development should not be insular to turn its back on the neighboring properties or streets. Instead, it should engage with the surroundings, promoting interaction in adjacent areas and development. The planned development does not set up or support any future visual connectivity with the remainder of the mixed-use area. It also has to have physical integration and shared features. There should be a tangible connection between the different parts of the development, such as shared amenities, walkways, or other spaces. This physical integration supports local connectivity, making the area feel cohesive and accessible. It should support for local services. Development must intentionally create opportunities for local services such as office, gyms, retail, employments, or public uses. The current single-use proposal fails to support this objective as it does not include any local services within the development. Design integration. There should be visual corridors or clear lines of sight connecting points of interest throughout the development. This creates a sense of openness, visual connectivity, making it easier for residents and visitors to navigate the space. The proposed development, however, is essentially isolated and does not provide connections to the property to the south. It is presented as a single-use development without the commercial component required by the comprehensive plan. It should have purposeful open space. Open space should not be incidental, but purposely designed to enhance connectivity and functional integration. They should serve as common areas that bring people together and provide opportunities for interaction. The open space provided is solely for the purpose of the single-family resident and is not designed to integrate. The open space was not designed with integration with commercial, to integrate with commercial. It should also provide pedestrian connectivity. Pedestrian pathways and connectivity must be prioritized. Mixed-use areas should encourage walkability, allow residents to move easily between homes, services, and public spaces without relying on vehicles. Pedestrian connectivity is crucial in mixed-use development to encourage walkability. The absence of such connectivity in the proposal would force residents to walk along busy arterial roads to reach services and public spaces or depends on vehicles to access them. The UDC requires pedestrian connections between residential and commercial areas. Limited reliance on arterial roads. Vehicle connectivity should be designed so that local traffic does not depend entirely on arterial roads. Instead, development should incorporate internal street system that distribute traffic more effectively within the area. So this proposal lacks connectivity to commercial areas without requiring residents to walk along or cross over a major arterial, effectively isolating development as a single-use area. So the applicant indicates that the residential uses comprise between 10 and 30% of the development area, which gross densities range from 6 to 40 units per acre within the residential portion. The proposed Sky Ranch neighborhood in the mixed-use area would occupy, again, 11% of the 219 acres, providing a density of 6.5 units per acre, aligning with the comprehensive plan's vision. However, the applicant did not account for the comprehensive plan's requirement that mixed-use areas bisected by an arterial or highway are considered separate, independent areas for use and design integration and will be evaluated as such. As a result, the applicant's approach to using their property as a single-use area does not align with the intent of the comprehensive plan for mixed-use development. To comply with the comprehensive plan, the applicant needs to redesign the proposal and incorporate a mix of housing types, local services. It could be office, daycares, and add public amenities, Parks Plaza, within the 24 acres of the mixed-use regional area. This would not only align with the future land use map designation, but also enhance the functionality and integration of the development within the surrounding area. And then staff also recommends that the applicant provide a mix of dwelling types within the residential area, such as single-family attached or townhomes within Block 8, lots 2 through 17 and 19 through 34, and Block 9, lots 2 through 17, and lots 19 through 34 of the proposed development as allowed by the comprehensive plan within the R15 zoning district. So the comprehensive plan policy 2.01.01C encouraged the applicants to maintain a range of residential land use designation that allows diverse lot sizes, housing types, and density. To support this policy, again, the staff recommends that the applicant provide additional housing options in the development. So staff finds that while the proposed lots comply with the dimensional standards for the R15 zoning district, they do not meet the intent of the mixed-use development, mixed-use design, due to the single-use nature of the proposal. And we do have some block lengths within the residential development that exceed the 750-foot requirement that will necessitate a waiver from the council. Additionally, the existing house that is proposed to remain as part of the proposed development abuts 2 streets, which is prohibited by the UDC. Further, the lots to the north do not transition to align with the large estate style lots that are zoned RUT within Ada County. Therefore, the applicant needs to revise their plat map to address the identified issues and demonstrate the necessary connections. Again, these are the items that I went over for our mixed use. This is where it talks about when it is bisected by an arterial that is reviewed independently. So based on the application that came before us, staff is recommending denial because the current proposal does not in line with the intent of the comprehensive plan. The proposal is limited to single-family residential development occupying the majority of the mixed-use designation area with no internal vehicle pedestrian connectivity between the areas, which by focusing solely on the inward-facing single-family home development, the proposal fails to meet the goal of creating a mixed-use environment that would foster a vibrant, self-sustaining community with neighborhood supportive uses, employment and/or retail options nearby. The lack of this compliance with the comprehensive plan could raise concerns about whether development would, again, contribute traffic issues, support the balance of the community, or meet long-term growth objectives. And as this application is, the applicant is requesting an annexation and rezone, the comprehensive plan is the appropriate tool to analyze this proposal. If the applicant wants to develop the property as proposed, the applicant has the option of continuing the hearing and applying for a comprehensive plan map amendment before the December 15th deadline. So at this point, I will stand for any questions that the commission may have.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Hey, everybody.
Good evening.
Keith Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant. And Commissioner Smith, last time I was here, you said something about, it seems like it's always hard when I come. So here we go.
There we go.
This one, we definitely feel a little beat up by the staff report, but I also want to explain why we're not crazy in the reasoning that we have for why we think this does satisfy the staff report, because we don't think that you've been given the complete picture. So let me walk you through this a little bit, and then by the end, hopefully we can get a little closer to being level set. So this is our project. We're discussing 43 acres near the intersection of Lake Hazel and Meridian. A portion of the property is already annexed. It's an area that the city's focused development on over the past few years. Linda did mention that this was part of the big 1,300 acre annexation. It's less than a mile from this project to the Discovery Park. We're very close to the new fire station, and Brighton's Apex development is on the east and the south sides of this project. So this is an area that's anticipated to develop, and it is developing with a number of uses in the very immediate vicinity. I'm going to return to this when I focus on the staff report, but with regard to the comprehensive planning, we do have the 2 designations. We are medium high density residential on the east, while the rest is mixed use regional. I do want to point out that the property is divided from the rest of the mixed use regional area, that node that's along the hard corner by the Rawson Canal. Given where the Rawson connects any access onto Meridian is going to be south of the canal. In other words, on the other side, not against our property. So no access to Meridian Road. In addition, we have low-density residential immediately to our north, which means that, and Linda mentioned that they would like to see a transition. So this is a very difficult piece. The city has comprehensive planned low-density residential against mixed-use regional that is constrained by the Rawson on the south and constrained by Meridian Road on the west. Now, in addition to being planned and close to city resources, the western half of the property has already been annexed. This, as I mentioned, it was part of that large annexation. The western portion has an existing R4 zone. So we have to keep that in mind when we're discussing the comp plan designation of mixed use. It's very important to note that the transportation network has been improved. You all know Meridian Road is all built out, but Lake Hazel is almost complete. I expect it'll be complete in the next couple of weeks. So it's going to be built to its ultimate condition all the way to Locust Grove, and then it's being extended to Eagle Road, which is why my commute now takes 45 minutes instead of 20, because I live just south of that intersection, and Commissioner Garrett knows exactly what I'm talking about. And then on the weekends, I can sneak over though and use the 10-foot pathways that go all the way from my house on Eagle all the way to Meridian Road. And all of that is in. And we participated in the construction of the 10-foot pathway through a cooperative development agreement with ACHD. So we paid for the 10-foot pathway in front of our project. It's already there. I think that's a very important piece to keep in mind when we say that there isn't any pedestrian connectivity over here. I don't think that's accurate. Includes the 284 single-family homes in the R15 zone. Minimum density is at 6 units per acre. We're just above that at 6.5. As Linda mentioned, all the open space requirements have met. We're above those minimums. But I would also remind the commission that we're less than a mile from Discovery Park. So it's a very good place to have a project just like this. Pedestrian connectivity. So pedestrian connectivity is throughout the project. It will connect to the larger pedestrian network. As I mentioned, the regional pathways have already been put in on Meridian Road. There will also be additional regional pathways on our west side at Meridian. Excuse me, when I said already in on Lake Hazel, not already in on Meridian. So we will be putting it in on Meridian, but we'll also be putting it in on the collector on the east side that is already under construction by Brighton. I also want to point out, and I think that you didn't quite get a complete picture from staff. So with regard to the access point, if I can get a cursor to wake up here. So you can see, it's not working very well there, but you can see this is our primary access down at Lake Hazel. That will have a light, and that will have a very easy ability for pedestrians to be able to cross the street to go into the massive development that Brighton is bringing forth with the several 100,000 square feet of commercial. So our folks will not have to get in a car to go to any of those projects, and they're going to have 10-foot pathways to get to all of them. With regard to the amenities, we're at 30 amenity points rather than 9 allowed. We have dog parks, pickleball, pool. It's going to be a very well amenitized project. Housing mix, these are some updated elevations. It's a mix of single and two-story detached. Now this comes up quite a bit, so we decided to start putting a slide together for this in terms of the timeline. So given where we are today, if we were to be approved, we would be doing final platting and site improvements in 2025 to be ready for our first phase of homes in 2026. Projects expected to develop in 6 phases. So we would have those phases going through 2031, then the last few houses coming online in 2033. So let's talk about the staff report and why we're not crazy. It's never staff's obligation to make the case for the applicant. Like I fully agree with that. It is not their job to make the argument for me. But I think that the staff report was unrealistic in some of the ways that it depicted this property as being a property that is just easy to turn into a mixed use paradise. From our view, there's two questions that have to be asked. So what does the comp plan actually require, and what impact do site constraints have on what we ultimately are proposing for the property? So let me start with a depiction of what those site restraints include. I'll get into each in more detail. So on our south, we have the Rawson that separates this property from the ability to be able to connect to the property to our south. On the north, as I mentioned, we have the low-density residential that requires a transition while we're trying to hit the density minimums for that area. And on the west, we have no access to Meridian Road, meaning that there's neither the visibility nor the access that is required for you to have a viable commercial project on the property. Now, the comp plan, and this is part of what didn't make it into the report, the comp plan is not a rigid document. The comp plan is a policy document. It is intended to set the stage for the zoning code requirements that would then set the various details. It's not a zoning code, it's policy. And so it speaks specifically that it is intended in a general way to describe how the community should develop. That concept of flexibility occurs throughout the comp plan, including in the discussion of the mixed use areas, which is where this is from. So with regard to the mixed use areas, within that area, some projects may not warrant a mix of uses. This is again directly from the comp plan. Comp plan also says that conditions may exist within some mixed use areas that influence these metrics, and access limitations is specifically one of the items that addresses that concern. So talking about the site, so the Rawson, just to give you a little bit of reference, the truck that's in these pictures is 22 feet long, gives you a sense of scale. The canal is about 30 feet wide in places. This isn't a small like drainage ditch that's easily overcome. The bridge divides our site from our neighbor, and our neighbor is the one that has the hard corner where commercial services are likely to be viable. The big issue again is access. With the mixed use area is on the west, right? So the west side of our project, that's the area that is separated from Meridian Road, no access, and is going to be hiding behind the Rawson Canal. So you have no visibility and no access. In addition, that's not just ITD that says that we're not going to have access on Meridian Road. That is Meridian City Code, that there would be no new approaches on a state highway. So Meridian says we can't have access there, which in turn makes that commercial development more difficult. But it's not just that we can't have the access. You heard staff say that in addition, we have to have sound and buffer requirements against Meridian Road. So we have to build a berm, put up a fence. There's no visibility anymore at that point. It makes this very undesirable for a commercial property. Again, the comp plan says that if there are access limitations, it supports reduced intensities. So what we have provided in order to try to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, we have provided internal gathering spaces throughout. One thing that I don't think was really addressed here is that this concept of what is the integration with our neighbor. Again, we have the Rawson Canal that separates us 30 feet, but we took our open space and we have this area that's down near our main area that is open, that faces and addresses our neighbor, that does provide for an opportunity for an integration of those areas to allow for folks to get into that easily and to make some enjoyment of that. I want to be clear though, the staff report states that we have to, in order to satisfy the comprehensive plan, we have to share amenities with our neighbor. That's an unconstitutional requirement. You can't force folks to share amenities with their neighbors. But what we can do is try to integrate it, look at it, make it sure that when things come along, that they can work together in an appropriate way. To be clear, we don't know what's going to develop on the property to our south. I can't control that. I can't control that timing, and the city can't force me to control that timing because obviously that would be an impossible condition. Anytime you throw a plan on your neighbor's property, you're in dangerous ground, especially if that plan ends up somehow being incorporated in your own approvals. But we have provided that open space in that area. And then in addition, and this is something that that Linda mentioned at the beginning, but later when we said that there's no connection is inaccurate, where you see there's a blue box there, we provided an access easement in that location that could be converted later in the future into a connection across the Rawson. Now, again, that incorporates significant costs and expense. If that's a public bridge, then that is public expense. And I just want to give you folks something to think about, is that the distance from that blue square to the main intersection is about 250 feet. Down to the main street is 150 feet, and back over is another 250 feet. So we'd be putting in a bridge in order to save 600 feet of travel distance. So it's the bang for the buck in terms of public expense for having an additional connection there across a significant canal is questionable in our view. Let's see. And again, we think that need is limited. And then from a pedestrian perspective, you can walk just around there. You're gonna have the traffic light. You're gonna be able to make it down to the neighboring, or excuse me, to the development across the street. All of this is gonna give pedestrians a low stress, easy crossing to go down to all of that new commercial development. And that development, if you look at the area, I don't think it's appropriate to leave that conversation out, because you can see that there is going to be significant commercial development just across the street, and we're providing a very easy way for our pedestrians to get there. So to conclude, we are proposing the 284 single-family homes. The area that's being criticized is already annexed and in the city with an R4 designation. We're trying to do something that gets it into the type of zoning that actually is approved for mixed use. Keep in mind, mixed use, one of the approved zoning designations is R15. And the remainder of it fits the medium high density residential designation perfectly. We have to keep in mind those constraints though. And when we say that we can just do bound crossing, that bound crossing is not behind the Rawson. Bound crossing's not behind a berm and a soundproof fence at Meridian Road. Bound crossing is at Boise Ave and Park Center with 100% access. So that's not an appropriate evaluation here. We think that this straddles the various issues, and we ask that it be approved. So I will stop talking and answer any questions that you have.
I do have a question. So one of the suggestions that you said across the lateral was to potentially build a bridge, even though your entrance to your subdivision is, what'd you say, 600 feet to the
Like that, yeah.
east of that. Will the irrigation company even allow you to do that?
So that's been an interesting conversation. The irrigation company is basically at this point starting to take the lead from ACHD, but we don't think that it's going to be a bridge that the public wants. ACHD is not requiring it of us now. My personal opinion is that under the prior, regime, they would have just said no. I can't say that at this point, but I certainly think there's questionable public benefit to putting a bridge across the Rawson under these circumstances.
And the ITD traffic study, has that been requested by your group or?
Madam Chair, so this is an area that's been heavily studied. With ACHD, we provided traffic counts in order to prove up the compass model, which is kind of where things are trending in areas that have been heavily studied and built out. We've provided all of that data to ITD, and we think that's all taken care of.
Okay, but the results haven't been given back to you. Is that what you're saying?
No, we do know the results. We know that the road improvements that have been made along that corridor and the timing for them continues to be proved up in accordance with the compass model, and with the traffic counts that we provided didn't contradict that. So that it's a little different than the create from scratch traffic impact study model that we might be used to.
Right.
But where we have this kind of big data, it helps us to be able to just prove things up rather than spending a lot more money to create it from scratch.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Yeah, I have a question.
Commissioner Garrett?
Yeah, as Mr. Clark indicated, he and I have a lot in common on this corner. I go by it daily, 3 times a day, today as a matter of fact. So I'm very familiar with it. There are developments that are north of this that, to the best of my knowledge, those are somewhat bound, aren't they, by Meridian Road constraints? I mean, they have those exits and entrances, but they're extremely dangerous.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Garrett, I see, I was thinking you were going to ask a different question, so I was going for a different slide, but I don't have a good one for that one. Yeah, that's correct. So what we have on these major highways is these access limitations. And ITD does try to ensure that the fewest amount of accesses that can be there as possible would be there. There are limitations on that, right? So if, a property is going to be landlocked, that sort of thing, then they would give typically a limited access. So, we would anticipate that the hard corner just to the south of us is probably going to get a right in, right out on Meridian Road. That we don't know that, but that, given our experience, we think that's likely to be the case. But overall, up and down that corridor, ITD policy and city code would both try as a safety matter to reduce the number of accesses, if that answers your question.
Right. I mean, I just look at that and I think, you just don't have any opportunity on Meridian Road. And if you did, it would be dangerous.
Mhm.
But I compliment you on this plan. I personally thought it was a good idea. And it is close to the fire station, as you indicated, and the big new development at Discovery Park and the expansion. They've got dog parks, they've got little league fields, they've got soccer fields, they've got any number of things within a short walking distance. So,
Thank you, Commissioner.
yeah.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sandoval?
For the applicant, so you're talking a lot, or you mentioned your neighbors to the south. Is this just a presumption that they want to do solely commercial? Have you had any conversations? Because that's a big assumption in my opinion. Have you had any talks? Have you asked them?
Commissioner Sandoval, yes, we have spoken with them and they have indicated that their intention is to develop commercial. Obviously, that's not a binding thing. We can't say that that absolutely is going to be the case, but that's what they've instructed us. And that certainly would be the highest and best use for the hard corner of Meridian Road and Lake Hazel, which everyone knows, for better or for worse, Lake Hazel is supposed to be the next Shinden, right? So there's going to be a lot of traffic coming along that hard corner. So I would be shocked if it was used for anything other than that.
Thanks.
Commissioner Smith?
Sure, thank you. Like I said, I can appreciate the difficult type of applications that you tend to represent. Someone's got to do them. And I'm glad that every inch of Meridian is being looked at for its best and highest use. That being said, so I just have a couple of questions. Could you walk me through, I guess, how these property boundaries came to be? Was this western portion, including the hard corner, was this at one point its own parcel?
Commissioner Smith, I don't know the answer to that. All I know is it was in separate ownership at the time we acquired it. And the person to the south is intending to hold and then ultimately develop. So I don't know exactly what the genesis of the properties were though. The Rawson being the natural divide, I would expect that they've been in separate ownership for a while, but I don't know that for sure.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. An additional question about the easement. Trying to just kind of imagine what that could be built out to be as a crossing that location, and its location on that kind of curved street doesn't quite make sense to me. I guess my question is, in an alternate configuration, one that maybe look different than this, do you anticipate that easement could be positioned somewhere else along the Rawson, perhaps in a way that might facilitate better kind of cross access? I guess what I'm asking is, if you had the entire property to go in one, would that easement potentially live somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a good question, Commissioner Smith. So there's a couple of different things going on there. So the reason we picked that location was because of site distances to try to meet ACHD policy. So we put it at the location where you're not going to have those 90-degree turns that make it difficult to get an access. The other issue is that and you guys know, I've probably had 5 or 6 applications in front of you guys that have been along canals. And one of the things we deal with when we're developing along canals is block length and having 45-degree angle streets, all that sort of thing. And then the other thing that drives this is that we have this kind of short distance north to south, which means that we've got to have some east-west roads coming down. And so between the block length limitations and the need for those east-west roads, it makes it very difficult to put that connection really anywhere else. The other issue, Commissioner Smith, that I would foresee is that if this develops to the south of us, like call it if it's a big box or a large convenience store or something like that, if you put that bridge in the middle, it's probably going into the back of the employee parking. Whereas we were thinking that if you have it over here to the side nearer the open space, that probably helps to integrate into something that could be more functional for that kind of mixed use concept. Dropping it into the back of the building didn't make sense to us.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Smith?
One other question. I think there was one slide that you had that talked about the future allocation for other parcels of what residential could be within the mixed uses. Yeah, right here. So if I'm reading this correctly, basically in regards to the percentage of the area that can be residential, is this essentially stating that we're almost limiting the rest of the mixed use to 44 acres of residential, or, basically 20% of their area with not per code, but is that the idea that we are allocating additional residential here so that we would have less residential at these other properties?
Commissioner Smith, what we were trying to do with this drawing, and I should note that I think staff doesn't agree with our interpretation of this, with the idea of the arterial bisecting, and now suddenly we have a mixed use area that lives unto itself and you can't consider anything else. Frankly, I don't think that's a realistic way to consider a mixed use area that covers all 4 sides of these major intersections, but I'll set that aside for now. But what we were trying to do was try to provide folks with some assurance that this is a relatively small portion of the mixed use area that is not ideal for commercial development, but yet you still have significant areas that could be devoted to commercial and still achieve the overall goals. So like I would note that across the street from us, that property that's north of the Rawson probably is going to end up with having some of the same conversations we're having here, because it's probably not going to, it's also going to probably be access constrained. So there's going to be these kind of flexibility type conversations that are going to be coming as you look at applications within this area. And we just kind of wanted to give you the larger context because we think it's too myopic to just look at those 2 properties in isolation.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, even if I'm taking the dispute with kind of staff around the arterial bisecting out of the picture, I'm just imagining a future hearing where, say, that site on the southwest, where full gospel Slavic churches coming and saying, hey, we have a lot of residential near us. We're right across from this big box. For whatever reason, we want to have a higher ratio of residential in our mixed use. But look at this northern property, there's 79 acres here. We can put more commercial and less residential there. I guess my concern, and I'm hoping you could speak to this, is that we're looking at, okay, increasing the residential here for a reason. And if they come to us, this future developer down here comes to us and says, okay, well, we actually want to increase the residential here for a reason. It's kind of putting it all either on the back burner of the final applicant either has to have a lot more commercial, or we have to accept that our residential to commercial ratio is just going to be out of whack for the area. And I think neither of those 2 outcomes are ideal. And so that's the concern. If you could speak to that, how is this not just putting that on the back burner down?
I get that. So Commissioner Smith, I understand the concern. The point of this drawing was to try to give everybody context as to what the outcome is and where where the residential would be, where we expect the commercial would be. 2 points in response to your question. One is, first, the comprehensive plan is a general guide. And second, that needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for each property. And so in this case, we're not asking you to kick the can and move the commercial to some other property just because that's our basic preference. We're asking you to look at this and say, okay, we think that this satisfies the comprehensive plan because you've got site constraints, but you still have done the X, Y, and Z, including, the pedestrian connections and orienting the open space next to your neighbor. And so under these facts, we think that you've done enough to satisfy our inquiry. And anybody, at the Full Gospel Slavic Church, if that property were to go, they'd have to jump through those exact same hoops. This isn't a precedent for anyone else.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Steele?
Yeah, I mean, what we've been presented here, I appreciate how this is locked in here. So, I mean, I don't want that to get lost on here. I like the fact that of all the amenities you have, the open space leaves a little to be desired as far as the placement of it, in my opinion. The bridge location, as far as using that as an argument because it's so close, I mean, it can be moved. Does it make sense to move it to where it might be in the back of a business? I don't know. But like you said, we don't know what's going to go there and what's the best use of this property as a whole without taking anything else into consideration. For the mixed use regional portion of this, I mean, the mixed use piece of it doesn't have to be commercial. And I think that's kind of what is being missed here. It doesn't have to be commercial, it just has to be different, has to be something else. So why is it just exactly the same as the rest of the property that's in this application? Why can't it be different in such a way that it actually blends in with the property that is going to be to the north and has a better use of, overall for other types of uses?
Commissioner Steele, I'm not sure I understand the last part of your question, but let me give a shot at it and
Sure.
see how it goes. So yeah, commercial is definitely a shorthand. When I say commercial, I also think, if I have $750,000 to invest in an office, a small office, I don't want to put it up behind a soundproof wall and a berm over on Meridian Road. And it is over at Meridian that we're talking about that is the area that's subject to this mixed use regional conversation. So I think that's probably a distinction without a difference in terms of commercial versus office versus whatever. With regard to the mix of housing types, we have single family detached, 2-story, 1-story. We've considered whether additional types of single family would make sense. As you guys know, this development group does a lot of this across the city. So for example, a townhome, in our view, a townhome doesn't really create a significant difference in terms of the look and feel of the neighborhood. It's going to cost just as much to build, and it's not going to sell in the same way. Because folks are going to prefer if they're going to spend that much, they're probably going to go somewhere else, or they're going to go for the house that costs the same, but has its own detached yard. And so in our view, it's a marketability question to go with it, just trying to be realistic in terms of trying to get something that could go to the market and be successful. So I hope that got to the various elements there.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Heath, it's yes, kind of. I mean, it just seems like you guys are very, very rigid about what you're going to put in there, period. Whether it's based on money or trends or whatever that looks like, it seems like that this is it, and you guys, you're just unwilling to budge on that. So it's going to be this type of housing, and that's it. And there are no other alternatives. I mean, there's, work, live, opportunities that could take place in here for people that don't necessarily need that road front. signage and exposure and things like that. There are other opportunities that could be had in here. So to just have the argument be as rigid as it is to have this kind of density and mixed use just doesn't make sense to me.
I understand. And, certainly as the recommending body, if you'd like to make a recommendation along those lines, we're happy to consider it. We kind of have to live in both worlds, right? We have to live in the world of the kind of theoretical comprehensive plan, and we also have to live in the world of what can be sold. And that's where we live.
Understood? Thank you.
And with that in mind, the current zoning of R4 is not marketable?
Madam Chair, that's a very good question. The development of the property that we're proposing is intending to try to make this consistent with the comprehensive plan designations, which is also consistent with the development agreement requirement to consider the comprehensive plan whenever you come in and suggest a rezone. So with that in mind, given that it's a mixed-use regional comprehensive plan area, we propose the R15. And with that, we have a minimum density across with all the different machinations of 6, and we stayed pretty close to that low end because I think we're at 6.5. So that's the thought process, is that we're trying to acknowledge and respect both what's in the development agreement and what's in the comprehensive plan.
One more question. For Sky Ranch, and I know this has nothing to do with you, what is to the north of you along Meridian Road? Is that another subdivision?
So north of us, there is vacant land that is comprehensive planned, low-density residential. So that's part of, when I mentioned that we have these various site constraints on all sides.
Right.
It's a little bit out of place to have a mixed-use density comp plan designation next to a low-density designation. And so that's why we feel a little bit of whiplash when staff says, okay, put in lower density stuff up there, but hit the mixed-use,
Down.
numbers, and it's tough. So
Is there any physical constraints on the north end of the Sky Ranch property? For example, you have the lateral on the south part. Wasn't there some topographical hills, or is it just all flat land between you and the next parcel going north?
I don't think there's any hills, and there's no significant topographical issues.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Smith?
question for staff, Kurt, the applicant. I recall in previous applications on other issues, we had examples where, say there was a development that was straddling, say R4 and R8, in order for the sake of maybe transitional kind of space, the code allowed for developing of some of the R8 and R4 and vice versa, to some percentage. Is there anything in code, or is there anything in the comp plan that would limit the ability to do something similar with this R15 and the mixed use residential on this side? Because a lot of what we're talking about with the mixed use residential is the Rawson kind of creating this natural barrier, and I'm seeing some less disruption on that medium high density residential side. I'm just wondering if there's a feasible alternative to where you can incorporate some of that mixed use, shift it over into that R15.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking whether or not there's a possibility of floating a designation across a different land use designation, I think is what you were asking. So yes, that is possible. The comp plan allows you to float up to 50%, but it's the larger of the two. And I believe the mixed use regional is the larger of the two. Or is it about the same? Okay, well then there is a potential to do that as well. And that goes to some of the other comments I want to share on some of the discussion that the applicants had with you. So couple clarifying remarks, if I may. One is if If commercial was provided along Meridian Road, there would not be a requirement for sound attenuation. That's only a requirement if you have a school, hospital, or residential. So again, if you were to pull up the plan there, and let's say, for example, you see where that westernmost stub street is stubbed to the north there, if that were to stay office and LO, and then the residential transitioned, you wouldn't be looking at that sound attenuation. So you're not blocking off the commercial business. The other, so I just wanted to provide that clarification. It's only required because the applicant is proposing a residential zone up against it. Whether it's R15 or R4, there has to be no sound attenuation. That is the code, that is accurate. And he is correct that access is very limited on this roadway, and it will be for the foreseeable future. And we are processing an application on the southern portion of Lake Hazel. So I just can't go into too many details with you because it is a pending application. So as you mentioned, that is accurate, what we're working with them on. But as you all know, the other thing that I'd like to share with the commission is what's difficult, and I agree with the applicant. He has some very valid points tonight, but the difficulty is we just modified our mixed use standards to make them hopefully easier to understand and incorporate them into these mixed use areas. But obviously when you have a plan, it doesn't always take into all the site constraints that could come with infill or these types of developments with canals, limited access. We try to do the best we can with goals and policies to give applicants flexibility. That's where staff in this particular case, and I think we've had enough conversations with the applicant offline on this, but that's where we're really challenged here is with us being so rigid in the code saying we have to look at this 36-acre mixed-use regional area. We can't look at the other surrounding areas. This particular site, 24 acres of the 36 is residential. So it's already exceeding the ratio of that residential use allowed by the comp plan. So all of those facts, and then just the integration with commercial and not giving us a concept plan, all of these things coming together, that's why it's difficult for staff to say, yes, this works. And that's why we've made the recommendation that we have. It's not that we don't disagree with the applicant and their points, because they are valid. This is a very limited site, and that is a big canal. But ultimately, staff has to look out for the public's interest, and we have to make sure, and that's why it was very critical when we modified those mixed-use standards. We had some general mixed-use policies, and then we had what we wanted to see in a mixed-use regional area. And so those two areas combined to give you the integration. The pedestrian, it's more than vehicle connection, it's pedestrian integration. And when we're forcing people out onto an arterial at a signal to go off, Lake Hazel will turn back into a commercial development. That's not integration. That's forcing more traffic on an arterial. And that's what the mixed use policies say don't do. That's why it's critical that we have the interconnected roadway. So again, when we talk with the applicant, I could see the mixed use is almost reversed on it. It should actually be Meridian Road, the commercial, and then transition to the east with your residential. And then hopefully someone on the low density residential above will float the mixed use designation on their frontage and get more office. And then you do have another access to potentially Meridian Road through Schaefer Few Estates. So there's ways to do it. We just don't have the plans or the information to show that proves to us that it does work. And that's why we're taking a pause on it, and we've recommended what we have.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So, part of the challenge that we're having is that some of the things that staff is asking for don't make sense to us, right? So like Bill's comment just now, and Bill and I get along great. We compliment each other on our shoes all the time. But when we say that something about our mixed use development requires folks to drive across the street to get to other commercial developments just because we didn't do whatever, doesn't make sense to me. We're providing the regional pathway on both sides. There's going to be an intersection. There's going to be a light. There's going to be a low stress crossing there. Another piece that I would just mention is that the standard I've got on the screen right now survived the update of the mixed use requirements from earlier this year. It existed before, it exists now. So even with the update to the mixed use standards in the comprehensive plan, we always have considered access limitations in determining whether this makes sense. And then the last, when we talk about looking out for the public, looking out for the public also means that we take a reasonable and practical interpretation of the facts and circumstances at the time that recognizes the investments and the private property rights and balances that with what staff would like to see in terms of the kind of hypothetical planned community as it might turn out to be. And so looking out for the public isn't just upholding a plan that, you know, I think has as you guys know, every comprehensive plan is a Rorschach test. But looking out for the public is not just that, it's looking out for the private property rights and making sure that we're taking that into account when we evaluate these things.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anybody to testify on this application?
Madam Chair, I have Sean Lanahan.
Can you come up? Did you want to speak or no? No? Okay. All right. Did you have any other comments? Well, I guess I should ask, is there anybody else on Zoom or in chambers?
Madam Chair, I have an Emily Shavers that signed up. Not sure if she would like to testify.
Is Emily here? Okay.
Madam Chair, that is it.
Do you have any other comments before we close the public hearing? All right. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to close the public hearing on Sky Ranch subdivision. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Anybody like to start?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, it's never an easy yes or an easy no. When Mr. Clark is stating his case. I understand and I agree with a lot of the challenges of the location. One of the things that I really struggle with is the concept of there being kind of crosswalks for pedestrian access. To me, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's always safe pedestrian access. I think back to, I think it was a year ago on Usick and Cloverdale where I believe a young mother was hit and killed. And I think there's some questions about, for example, I think that's actually in Boise's jurisdiction, but there are some questions to me if intersections like that are safe. And I think when I think about serving community, I'm thinking about things like that. I'm thinking about how we handle the future infill issue that this might create on that southern bound. I'm thinking about just the difficulty making this transition in any direction. And I understand that this is something that the applicant has worked hard to address. But I think this is an issue for me where I don't know if I can support it. I don't think I'm there. I'm not enthusiastically opposed to it. I see a lot of the effort and a lot of the care that went into the application. But there are too many issues at the moment regarding easements, potentially floating, all kind of the comp plan doesn't really mandate that kind of issues that I think is just too much for me to support at the moment. I do think something in the future that might look somewhat similar to this could be a great application, but I think at the time with all of those kind of surrounding issues, there's just too many of them at the moment for me to support.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Seal?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a tough one to develop. for all the reasons that Mr. Clark brought up. So it's going to be tough. And I don't know that it's fair necessarily that the connectivity portion with the canal being there. I don't know that it's fair that we expect that of the applicant. That said, that is what is required for this. So that's, unfortunate for this piece of property. I would like to see, I mean, if there's, if the applicant were amenable, to be honest, I would like to see some kind of blending of, mixed use, switch some of that out in order to provide for, more of a mixed use type development to go in across the board. And I mean, the mechanism is there to do that. So that way we don't have, essentially we're taking an R4, we're going to an R15 and we're just packing everything that we can in there possibly. When you have really long drive aisles and 7 shared driveways, you're packing everything in there you possibly can. So that's tough for me to swallow. So I would like to see, something happen at this location, simply because I think it is going to be hard to develop. And I think this is close to something that we might want to see go in there. I just don't think this is what it needs to be at this point in time. I mean, I can appreciate where it's at but I share Commissioner Smith's sentiment that I'm not there with it. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Garrett.
Yeah, I'm contrary to their opinions. I'm familiar, as I said, I go by this at least once a day, sometimes multiple. It's a tough intersection, and Lake Hazel's being developed into 5 lanes, and it will have a lot of traffic. Whether someone is hit by a car, I don't think we can hold Mr. Clark.
Right.
That's fate. But the fact that this has many amenities already present, I think it suffices to do with what he's given on this, and you have no access on Meridian. I mean, the speed limit says 55, and I think it's 20% of the people do that. 80% far exceed that. And so you're limited on Meridian. And then Lake Hazel is going to be a 5-lane road, so it won't have the exact constraints that it did when it was a 2-lane road. It'll have traffic dispersed over a greater area. And that should be finished any day now. I look at it. And I think that this development is well conceived for given the constraints that you have, the physical constraints. And I just don't know how you'd ever put any type of business in there. There's no visibility. You'd have to be a destination business that everybody knew about. And there's no signage, nothing. So I think being a residence is about the only thing you can do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sandoval, do you have any comments?
Madam Chair. Yeah, to me, the biggest issues are the cross access. And I know you said the additional expense of having that extra bridge likely wouldn't be worth it. But in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so that area to the south, say we go with your plan, it's all residential R15. Business to the south. So a family's got to go, that's 600 feet. That's not a big deal, but then they're on Lake Hazel, which is obviously a very large arterial street. So I think just safety-wise, that's a huge issue, and I don't think there's any amount of money or resources really that would pay for even the possibility of an accident on a road like that. So the interconnectivity to me is the biggest issue. Not so much the residential. It's so hard to integrate other uses in there, and I understand maybe a better way to go about this, as staff suggested, is to put in an application to modify the comp plan. I think that's reasonable accommodation, but as it sits, yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I feel like the density for the South Meridian is too high. this private streets with all those houses kind of crammed in there, it just seems, and I understand that you want to be marketable and you have a product to sell, and townhouses are going to cost the same as the other, but I think there's got to be a good compromise for redesign to be able to have maybe, if it is a commercial or office, more on Lake Hazel side, since it's going to be, as somebody pointed out, the new Chinden, and less density for the transition for the other subdivisions that are around it. So the way it's designed right now, I cannot support it either. Commissioner Smith, did you have any other thoughts?
I'm sure just a motion if.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Sale?
just real quick, and this, just off of what Commissioner Garrett had said, I mean, even in opposition, you kind of help make my point. And that is, there is a massive amount of connectivity that's going on as far as the major arterials here. So if they were to switch up the mixed use for some of the residential and redo that and bring that down onto Lake Hazel Road, that to me makes way more sense because there is a lot of exposure there. As far as the 10-foot pathways, I struggle with why we put those right on the major arterials here. So I wish we would follow other communities and, park them back a little bit so that they're just a much safer way to go about that as it would be. Because I think that I'm glad to see that the 10-foot pathways are coming in. They make a lot of sense. They make, especially for people like me that like to bike everywhere. And I'm, hopefully they'll continue to do that and make them more protected, especially on, major arterials and intersections like this. And then as far as if they were to swap some of the mixed use and residential areas, I think they could do it in such a way that the bridge then makes sense and ties in better to what may be commercial property on, to the south of them, as well as allow them to have, better lot alignment with the property that's to the north of them. So again, I mean, it's a really tough piece of property to develop, but I think being rigid in that it can only be this, and it's because it can only be like this, and it can only be because of our access limitations is not accurate. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Yep, Madam Chair, after considering all staff applicant and public testimony, I move to recommend denial of file number H-2024-0022 as presented during the hearing of October 17th, 2024 for the following reasons. A lack of mixed use and compliant with the spirit of the comprehensive plan, limited connectivity, limited interconnectivity, limited transition space from adjacent properties, and pedestrian safety concerns.
Second.
It's been moved and second to deny application 2024-0022 Sky Ranch subdivision for the reasons mentioned. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you. Commissioners, are we still good to go? Keep going. We're going to do a twofer again. Applications 0045 and 0046 for Touchmark Office Buildings A and B. We will begin with the staff report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Items number 9 and 10 on the agenda are the conditional use permits for Touchmark Office Buildings A and B. The applicant is requesting 2 conditional use permits, one for each property, to construct 2 office buildings, one being 4,760 square feet and the other being 4,534 square feet in the LO zoning district. So as shown on the screen, the existing zoning is LO and the flume designation is mixed use community.
Office buildings are typically a permitted use in the LO zoning. However, the subject properties had a conditional use permit that was approved in 2005 for the previous applicant to develop a property in a mixed-use retirement community consisting of residential dwellings, medical offices, commercial retail businesses, and senior community center. The CUP requires all lots within the scope of this permit to receive a detailed CUP approval prior to developing the property. This is the reason why we're processing 2 CUPs tonight for otherwise a permitted use. To align with the current development, staff conditioned the applicant to enhance landscaping between the building and along the eastern buffer. Goal 2.09.02E of the comprehensive plan emphasizes the importance of consistent landscaping standards for developments. Therefore, staff is advising these improvements to be included with the certificate of zoning compliance and design review applications. So these are the 2 landscape plans. The original one is on the left that was submitted, and this is the revised one. The yellow highlights are what was added. So staff did talk with the applicant regarding the condition, and the applicant did make a slight change. You guys are the commission or the decision-making body on both of these CUPs tonight. So if you think that that is an adequate change for landscaping, you can approve it that way. If you want to ask for more, or you want to strike the condition altogether, you can do that. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, and the main condition being the one you see on the screen right here. And, we did receive written testimony from the applicant. I will stand for any questions you guys have at this time.
Would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening. Marcel Lopez, 4824 West Fairview Avenue, here for the applicant. Want to thank Nick and Bill for their assistance through this process. So we had a little presentation here. Can get that. Nick's working on work. So Nick went through the details a little quick here, but just a little more background. So as Nick indicated, these are 2 lots, 9 and 10 of the Touchmart Center subdivision. The subdivision was platted back in 2007. These lots have been vacant for the duration of time that the plat was done. We're proposing to do, as Nick indicated, 2 separate detached buildings, one approximately 4,500 square feet, and the other one 4,700 square feet. And these are just samples of the elevations. We've provided a little bit of variation between the 2 buildings just to add for the aesthetic value. There were actually 3 versions of the landscape plan that we went through. And this is the revised one that was submitted to staff on October 15th. As Nick indicated, we did add some additional plantings to the backside of these buildings on the east boundary, based on their comments in the staff report. The challenge here is that even though we've set these buildings 10 feet off the boundary line, the LO allows for a 0 lot line, but there's really not much room back here. In addition to the air conditioning units that are located on the back of the building, there's also existing pressure irrigation. There will likely be some power line utilities that run through that section there, as well as gas lines. So we're requesting that the conditions be modified, that the condition be removed, or this plan be approved and accepted. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Smith?
regarding the vegetation, help me understand a little bit. Looks like there's additional vegetation on the north and south ends in a similar kind of footprint. I understand pressure irrigation, power lines, maybe they preclude trees and things like that. But is there anything that is physically limiting, say, similar inclusions of shrubs or perennials, like you had included on the other slide? Could you just help me understand that a little bit better?
Yeah, so as I said very quickly, in addition to the AC units, there's going to be additional utilities that are run along the backside. So the full 10 feet of area there is not really available. And the recommendations for the AC units is to keep those areas clear about 2 feet around them. So there's not much space. It looks quite open, but what we've included are these bunch grasses that'll grow and they'll get about 4 feet in diameter, about 4 feet to 6 feet tall. So they'll cover quite an area. They don't look great on the plan here, but you can see from the original submission, which is on the screen here on the left side, to the last revision that was submitted to the staff on the 15th, we've done quite a bit. Overall, we've added about 16 perennials, shrubs, grasses, and 4 additional trees based on those recommendations. So we have tried to accommodate that. The east boundary, there's not a whole lot of room. And once we accommodate the AC units along with the additional utilities, there's not much more we can do.
What is on the other side of the back of this building? So you're suggesting these tall grasses behind the building, there's parking in front of the building. What goes east, or what's next? What is that? That's part of your complex as well, correct? Are those empty lots right now?
It's a vacant lot, correct? Let me see, get back here real quick. Yes, so lot 11, which is behind us, currently is vacant. The likelihood is that if it does develop, it would develop, our back would be to their side. So we wouldn't be adding anything visually necessarily because they wouldn't be looking out the front of their building.
And what's the one south of that? Is that number 13?
Correct, yes. And that one's also vacant.
And so you would propose that if that was to be developed, it would also be to the side of this building?
More than likely, yes, because their access would come from the south there.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions? Any more questions for the applicant before we look for public testimony?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Smith?
one quick one. If we go back to that landscape plan, could you just help me understand where the AC units are supposed to be? Because I thought I understood where they were going to be, but I think I misunderstood.
Yeah, so let's see if I can. They're the square units along the back of the building. The shrubs or the grasses that we added are in between. So there's 3 bunches in between. The 4 square units are the AC units. They're also screened, so they won't be visible. They'll have an attractive, appealing screening to them.
Okay, so those squares they were not included in the original plan. They were included in revision 2, and then the grass between they were included in revision 1, and the grass between is in revision 2. Is that
the original? It's hard to see, but you can see the screenings there. The AC units aren't very visible.
Thank you.
We did accommodate for them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone to testify?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No one has signed up.
Okay. Did you have any other comments, or are you good? All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
so moved?
Second.
It's been moved and second to close the public hearings for application 0046 and 0045 for Touchmark Office Buildings A and B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Smith?
for staff, could we get that language back up on the screen just to understand what we're addressing? And Madam Chair?
Commissioner Smith?
While that's getting pulled up just at a conceptual level, I don't have too much of an issue with this. I think I probably would like to see an attempt for a little bit more. I understand this, that the space is tough. At the end of the day, there are additional CUPs going to be happening for the other properties in the area, and those can be reviewed for consistency's sake. It doesn't seem like there's a ton that is currently in place. I think from my perspective, maybe trees and shrubs might be too much for the area, but I don't know if the tall grass. It seems there's probably a happy medium somewhere in between those two. Maybe usage of perennials, or maybe if there are some smaller shrubs that are a little bit less intrusive, might blend a little bit. But at the end of the day, I think this is kind of all within the same development. I don't think it's going to massively alter the outcome regardless. That's just kind of some starting thoughts.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal?
Yeah, I think what the applicant has in their revised landscape plan number 2 is more than adequate. So I mean, the back of the building is the back of the building. I understand somebody might be looking at it out of a side window or something, but they continue to develop this as more of the commercial element of that, office buildings and things like that, then I don't think that that's gonna weigh in on it at all. So, and I mean, it's because it was because it was conditioned as a CUP, we're having to modify the CUPs on both properties in order to do this. So to me, it's more of a formality than anything.
Right.
When Touchmark's putting more buildings on Touchmark Lane, then,
Right. Commissioner Sandoval, do you have any other comments?
I have a motion, Madam Chair.
Okay.
That's appropriate.
Yep.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2024-0045 and H 2024-006 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 17th, 2024, with the following modifications. Acceptance and use of the applicant's revision number 2 landscape plan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second to approve Touchmark Office Spaces Buildings A and B conditional use permit. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we have one more to go. Application 2024-0044 McDonald's out at Forenzi Plaza, and we will begin with the staff report.
Madam Chair, members of the commission. So next item on the agenda is the conditional use permit for McDonald's at Firenze Plaza. So the applicant requests a conditional use permit to construct and operate a 4,507 square foot restaurant with a drive-through within 300 feet of a residential district and another drive-through in the CC zoning district. The site consists of 0.9 of an acre zoned CC located at 3058 East Amity Road. As shown on the screen, the current zoning is CC and the flume designation is mixed use community. The original concept plan for Firenze Plaza was done in 2016, and this was the concept plan that was provided. As you can see where the McDonald's is proposed currently, there was a drive-through shown. So that has been kind of it's consistent with the original concept plan during the annexation of this property in 2016. The site features 2 access points on the north side of the property from internal drive aisles between the subject property and Albertsons. The internal drive aisle connects to South Kubola Avenue on the western side of the property. The proposed restaurant features 2 drive-through lanes that merge into one with a space to queue a total of 16 vehicles along with an escape lane located on the south side of the site, outside of the drive-through lane. Staff has some concerns about peak hour stacking as it may back out into the drive aisle during hours that may impact neighboring businesses. However, staff has worked with the applicant to look at data from McDonald's drive-throughs during peak hours, and it has alleviated most of staff's concerns. The applicant provided data discussing peak hour traffic for McDonald's in Meridian, as well as explaining that the 100 feet between the order kiosk and the pickup window is the most efficient layout for McDonald's. If needed, McDonald's will direct patrons to park in parking stalls to prevent stacking from extending beyond the means of the site. The proposed hour of operations are 5 a.m. to 12 a.m., complying with the UDC. Conceptual building elevations were submitted for the proposed restaurant. The proposed building design includes following materials: ephes brick, standing seam metal panels, parapet metal wall caps, and glazing. Staff recommends the incorporation of additional fenestration, glazing, or banding on the north facade, or on the south facade, as this is the primary facade visible from East Amity Road. Staff is recommending approval with conditions and has received 26 letters in opposition now and 2 letters of support for the project, with the main concerns regarding the smell from the project, property values decreasing, safety, traffic, and health of the neighborhood. And I'll stand for any questions at this time.
Would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening, Aaron Zuzak, 1556 Parkside Drive, Walnut Creek, California, with Broman Development Company. Good evening, Madam Chair. We have a presentation, don't we? PowerPoint, sorry. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Again, my name is Aaron Zuzak, and I'm with Broman Development Company, and thank you very much for allowing me to be here before you guys again tonight. I'm here to request your approval of the conditional use permit application for McDonald's at Forenza Plaza. I'm joined here with one of my business partners, Vic DeMello, and he's also Broman Development Company, and he's responsible for organizing all our leasing efforts for this development. And tonight, I'm also here with a team from McDonald's to help us with our presentation. We appreciate staff's thoughtful analysis of this project. The project is in full compliance of the conditional use permit criteria, and we're in agreement with all of the conditions of approval. We're here tonight requesting this conditional use permit only because the drive-through is within 300 feet of the Albertsons pharmacy pickup window. Broman Development Company is a family-owned, long-term operator of retail properties. We take pride in our developments. We're not a merchant transactional developer looking to build and sell our next project. We're here to invest in the community, to provide the best-in-class grocery-anchored neighborhood center. And McDonald's will complement the diversity of uses we have brought to Forenza Plaza and is synergistic with our existing development. The development of Forenza Plaza has been a long road of approvals and construction, with the Albertsons obtaining the master plan approvals for the development in 2017, with the initial preliminary plat and development agreement approvals in 2019, and Albertsons opening their doors in June of 2022. In 2019, the approved preliminary plat included the development of a fast food 5,000 square foot restaurant on this parcel. Our proposed development is substantially in compliance with a similar shaped building and a drive-through layout, but it actually is reducing the building size by almost 10%. We started our involvement in Forenza Plaza over 3 years ago, and we purchased the property from Albertsons in early 2022. And have since completed the construction of the Albertsons and 4 additional high-quality retail and commercial buildings in the center. We've worked very hard to enhance the quality of the development by bringing the best-in-class tenants and setting a new standard by enhancing the architectural design of the project. I've spent a great deal of time ensuring that the design theme and the architectural standards throughout the development are of the highest quality. And we believe you'll see that with McDonald's elevations, which are a far adaptation from their prototypical design. We've been patiently working with a number of great tenants in the development, whom we believe will provide a variety of options for the residents of South Meridian. We've introduced a diverse number of high-quality food options, including a sit-down restaurant, which is currently under construction in one of our buildings. takeout options, and we're excited to present McDonald's on this remaining parcel on Amity. We're excited to deliver to the community a high-quality project that will serve a variety of needs and can be enjoyed by the neighborhood and community. In this category of use, McDonald's is on a select list of tenants that meets our standards of providing impactful community support with the long-term owner-operators involved in this project. I respectfully request the Planning and Zoning's approval of the conditional use permit application. I'm here to address any comments or questions, concerns, and Connor is here to finish the presentation for McDonald's.
Hello, Connor Candrine, 1100 West Idaho Street, Boise, Idaho. I'm here on behalf of McDonald's and appreciate your time tonight. So a little bit of timeline of how we got here. In April of this year, we had a pre-app meeting with staff. We hosted a neighborhood meeting on August 2024, and then submitted our application shortly thereafter. Here we are tonight at the P&Z hearing. So the site is located near the intersection of Amity and Eagle Road in the Forenza Plaza master planned development. The site is just shy of 1 acre and is proposing no direct access onto Cubola Avenue or Amity Road. It is within the mixed use community Flume destination and in the community business zoning, which a drive-through restaurant is an allowed use. Again, the conditional use permit because of the pharmacy window on the Albertsons drive-through within 300 feet. The site plan includes a 4,500 square foot, 1-story building. We have 3 entrance drives proposed for the site. 2 of them are 2-way drive aisles, and 1 of them is a 1-way drive aisle. We have 2 drive-through lanes with a full bypass lane. We have the landscape buffers along Amity and Cubola Avenue installed with the final plat of the Forenza Plaza. The parking required is 18 spaces with 1 bicycle space. We are providing 21 spaces and 1 bicycle rack or 2 spaces. We wanted to add a slide to show the distances from the existing residential at this site. And then the conceptual elevations that have been discussed to be harmonious with the rest of the materials and design in the development. We feel we are in compliance with the CUP criteria as noted by staff. And we agree with the staff conditions. And we are here requesting approval of the conditional use permit. We will stand for any questions.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant at this time?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. I'm just curious regarding the addressing of stacking and things like that with the parking spaces being pulled out, customers pulling out into the parking spaces. How many are being intended to be set aside for those? If it's similar to other McDonald's, I assume there's dedicated spaces for those.
Yeah, so this location actually has all the bells and whistles of efficiency for McDonald's. They have, if you can see the mouse here, on the west or east side of the building, you can see cars 1 and 2 are in their roll forward positions. That's fairly new for McDonald's. This location also has a 3rd window at car 3 that a vehicle can pull forward to. And then car 4 is at the present window. As it was mentioned by staff, we have done studies on peaking at the other locations within Meridian, and that peaking was found to be less than what would spill out of this site.
So to be clear, the 21 is not including those 21 parking spaces that you have are not including those roll forward positions.
No, the 21 spaces is just the actual parking spaces on the site.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody that would like to testify?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the first person we have is Leanne Hume. Okay, the next person would be Andrea Nilsson.
Hi. If you can
Hi.
state your name and address for the record, that would be great.
My name is Andrea Nilsson, 1461 East Roanoke Drive, Boise, Idaho.
Okay.
And I have a little bit of a cold, so sorry, bear with me. I've been in the real estate industry for 23 years now. So I've worked on developments kind of all over the country. I was in-house with Albertsons for 8 years, so I've worked on Albertsons developments across the country. And coming into tonight's meeting, I read all of the emails. I read the article too that came out in Boise Dev that was titled "The Stink" in the south of Meridian. And when you look across the country and you look at the developments, there are McDonald's in several grocery anchored centers, not only in the Treasure Valley, but across the country. And excuse me, some of the letters indicated that they thought their property would be devalued by having a McDonald's as part of the project. And I just think that's an interesting statement because it's just not true. You go to Eagle, Idaho, there's a McDonald's in the Albertsons parking lot, and I think you would be hard pressed to say that your property has been devalued in Eagle, Idaho. So I just thought it was interesting because I think in this project particularly, we have turned down several tenants because we didn't think they were a good fit for the project. So we've really put effort into making sure that we have services, nail salon, club Pilates, a bank, a dentist. We wanted to make sure we have sit-down restaurants, which is why we have 2,800 square feet that is still vacant there. We're working hand in hand with Albertsons to try to get a few waivers that we need to allow that sit-down restaurant in the other end cap. We have Jersey Mike's, which I think is a healthier option for sandwiches. We have Tide Dry Cleaners, which is another service provider. So I feel like we've turned away several tenants that we just did not think were a good fit for the project. And so I just thought it was very interesting when people were so upset about McDonald's, because if you look at their menu, they actually have healthier options if you like to choose them. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of give my 2 cents there based on development that I've done across the country. I think you're never going to make everybody happy, but I think we've done a really good job trying to do that in this development.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, the next person that signed up is Victor DeMello, I believe.
Okay.
The next person is Julie Kistler.
Good evening.
Julie Kistler, 1401 South Denver in Boise. And I don't know if we can go back to the slide that showed the distances between. Oh, yep, that one. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents to this because I actually live less than 100 feet from a McDonald's off of Broadway Avenue in Boise. And McDonald's has done a great job with their landscaping and their barrier between the residences between my home and the McDonald's. I don't have any issues with sound stacking. I mean, I live off of Broadway and I hear more of that than I do from the McDonald's, and there's absolutely no smell. And I've been there 24 hours a day. I mean, I've been there when there's football games, and the traffic has had no impact on myself and other neighbors in the area that I've discussed with. So that was all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, the next person is Kelly Elliott.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm going to move this down a little bit. Kelly Elliott, 4199 South Leonardo Avenue. I I actually was quoted in that Boise Dev article that I just saw a week ago. So yay for seeing that, because I didn't even know there was a public hearing because I did not see the sign until this week. So yes, I am in opposition of this for several reasons, and my comments have already been submitted. But as the young lady, much respect to her for her experience. She lives off Broadway. We live in Meridian, surrounded by parks, walking paths, pocket parks, a neighborhood elementary school. All due respect to Albertsons and the owners of the development, and McDonald's does not fit in with our neighborhood. And the across the street from the site is zoned as residential. So how does that work when the drive-through is again right by residential? That's R8 designation. I sat in the Albertsons parking lot the other morning just to see what it would be like to visualize, give an opportunity to see that, well, this drive-through thing sounds interesting. I sat in a parking spot so I could see the pharmacy. There was a lady at the pharmacy drive-through. It's a very busy drive-through because nobody wants to get out and get their medicine if that's all they need. They go through that drive-through. So Albertsons had a truck blocking the back portion of the entrance. You could still get into it, but you had to go around the truck because that's where they unload on that back slot. So there was a truck blocking that. Car drove around it to get to the pharmacy, and then another car was coming in. So because that truck was blocking, they went down the street in front where those parked cars are, that little outlet street on the, on the other side of the site. The same time the pharmacy lady was exiting, and it's tight. It is extremely tight. And I can't imagine a drive-through going in on this corner, even as bare as it is right now, just because of the pharmacy drive-through, the buffer, the parking, and the street that's minimal. Now, I also want to talk about, I was very surprised to see that ACHD didn't have anything to say, ITD didn't have anything to say, because coming off this roundabout, and by the way, the whole CC is supposed to be encouragement, support, benefit of living, shopping, dining, and working nearby, thereby reducing vehicle trips. A drive-through does not reduce vehicle trips. It draws more vehicles to that area. So I thought that was interesting. Also, the owner's own sell for these tenant spots is 23,000 cars a day through that roundabout. Is that my time's done?
It is.
Okay, I respectfully asked that it be denied.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair, the next person is Brett Shavers. Okay. Robert Yagus, sorry.
Okay.
Last on the list is Samantha Hall.
If you'd like to testify, you'll have to come up. If you can give your name and address for the record, please.
Samantha Hall, 2979 East Ragusa Street. So I live the closest to where this would be. And there are tons of cars in there through the roundabout all the time. The lanes merge. If you guys have driven, I'm sure some of you have driven through that roundabout. So it goes from, I think it's 3 lanes, because there's like 2 coming from the roundabout. And then they all merge right in that same spot where some of those exits would be. So you're gonna have a lot more traffic coming out of the Albertsons area and this drive-through area where all the lanes are merging right there as well. It's gonna be incredibly chaotic, and it's not a good fit for that neighborhood, not whatsoever. I know you guys are trying to say that it looks classy, and it's high quality. McDonald's is not high quality, does not fit with that neighborhood. It does not fit with what you guys are trying to do in that whole section of Meridian. Right after that, Lake Hazel, you guys are trying to do a lot of pretty stuff off of there. This does not fit. So and we actually live there, so that is why we are so concerned about it. Because our kids drive through there, our teenage drivers, and our children walk through there and ride their bikes through there.
Thank you. Madam Clerk,
Madam Chair, no one else has signed up.
would the applicant like to come forward and address some of the concerns?
Yeah, we would like to speak on behalf of maybe the concern on traffic and the concern on circulation within the development. We'll start with the circulation on the development. So I want to go back to the original plan and maybe point out the improvement of circulation that we are proposing on this site. Originally, this site was proposed with the, maybe, oh, there we go. As you can see, it was originally proposed with the drive-through and the parking directly accessing off of that shared drive aisle for the overall development. And the site plan now actually has a separation of a nearly 10-foot wide planter to create separation from that shared drive aisle and pull the McDonald's users into the site rather than stacking in that shared drive aisle, clogging up the rest of the development. In regards of the traffic study, because this was studied as an overall development, the original traffic impact study for the site was analyzed as a 5,000 square foot building. And now we are proposing a 4,500 square foot building. So we wanted to show the traffic counts decreased based on that reduction in square footage. And as it was noted, ACHD did not have any comment on this project because all of the applicable improvements of the streets were done as part of the overall development at that 5,000 square foot. So those improvements that were already installed would be more than adequate for the reduction in building size.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any other questions for the applicant before we close the public hearing?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Smith?
Are there any contingencies, just generally speaking, if say McDonald's is having a really good day and the additional efficiency roll-up lanes aren't enough? Are there contingencies in place regarding handling that overflow in that scenario?
Would you mind if we actually have the McDonald's folks come up and answer this question?
Fine. Hi, if you could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Robert Yagushevsky, 7105 Fairway Avenue Southeast, Snoqualmie, Washington.
Okay.
So in terms of contingencies, I believe that we've already shown the pull forward lanes, which is what we have those for. We also can route people around to open parking stalls if need be, to the point where it ever got to that. But we've analyzed this and we don't anticipate getting any more than 3 cars behind the order points. So, you know, one in one lane and 2 in the other. So, and then I think we can fit actually an additional car without blocking the drive aisle on top of that. So we've put a lot of thought into this, you know, and we believe we have the space to mitigate if we have a really great day, like you're saying.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second to close the public hearing for application dash 2024-0044. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Before we go forward, Kurt or planners, I would just like to reiterate or have you reiterate what we are voting on tonight.
So Madam Chair, members of the commission, Yeah, I guess I'll start by starting at the 10,000-foot level, which is, and it's already been alluded to, but this project is nearly fully entitled, at the point of annexation, and the concept plan and preliminary plat were part of the development agreement for this property. So those entitlements are in place. I think as was mentioned in the staff report, a restaurant is a permitted use in this zoning district. But really the only issue before the commission this evening is a very narrow issue, which is, and has been discussed previously, because this is another drive-through in close proximity to the drive-through at Albertsons for their pharmacy and/or within 300 feet of a residential district. That's the issue that's before you. And so the purpose of the conditional use permit before you tonight is what mitigations may be required, conditions may be required to mitigate the impacts of this drive-through because of its proximity to another drive-through. And so staff has developed a list of proposed conditions for your consideration. The applicant has indicated that the applicant is in agreement with those conditions. And so that's the issue before you, is a conditional use permit that is very specific to this drive-through, and only because it's in close proximity to the Albertsons Pharmacy drive-through.
Nick, do you have anything else that you want to add as far as the conditional use permit?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, no, I think Kurt did a great job. It's really, restaurant is a permitted use in the CC. So if McDonald's did not want to drive through here and just wanted to put a brick and mortar with no drive-through, they could have done that without going through the public hearing process. So really it is just for the drive-through here tonight. And like Kurt said, for any mitigation to your concerns that you might have regarding traffic and those type of things for the drive-through, correct?
So for those of you in attendance tonight, and if you're also listening on Zoom, this could have been, any restaurant, but they announced that it was going to be McDonald's. So it could have been, they could have not said what it was. They were going to just say a drive-through restaurant. And so the permitted use is already there. As a voting body for a conditional use permit, it is not within our purview to say yes or no on the type of food that's going to be offered. Our job is to make sure that they are following the rules of the City of Meridian for the conditional use permit. That is what we've been asked to vote on tonight. It just happens to be a McDonald's. If you don't like McDonald's, if you don't like Taco Bell, if you don't like In-N-Out, then it's been already approved to be a drive-through restaurant. That's happening. So it happened to be that the developer of this particular organization has decided that the tenant is going to be McDonald's. So commissioners, do we have any comments in regard to this application of what's been put up in front of us to vote on this conditional use permit?
Madam Chair.
Defer.
All right. Commissioner
Yeah.
Sandoval?
Yeah, just to address some of the public testimony here, I'm one of those nutty people who thinks that we should have 700 ingredients approved to eat. So I'm all about health food, but fast food is not on trial here. It's really just that drive-through to me. And that barrier with that island, I think, is a great separation. So as far as the CUP, I don't see really any option other than to approve it.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I echo a lot of that feedback. I also think that this kind of looks similar, or a lot of the concerns about Albertsons being near McDonald's. I think immediately to Target on Chinden, having a Starbucks, I believe a KFC or an A&W there, and that functions relatively, adequately. I don't see any issues when I'm there. And so, I mean, I'm sure there are growing pains as the development gets settled, but the plan in place, I think, is great. I'm happy to see that that the applicant is embracing technology and embracing kind of new developments with these new kind of windows and these pull forward locations. I think that's an interesting approach, and to know that there's an additional fallbacks in case there's a great day at peak hours. I feel happy in supporting this.
Commissioner Steele, any comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I echo what was just said about the drive forward position stuff, and First time I really saw any of those was when I was on the East Coast in North Carolina, and they work very, very well. So it's good. I mean, just to address some of the other comments that were made in public testimony, the written public testimony, I mean, there's a million things that could have got in here. So, you know, and I mean, there's a lot of restaurants that fit the same complaints that are there. So, I mean, I love Los Betos, but you can smell it from quite a ways away. It's a great local restaurant. Don't get me wrong. You know, Sid's Garage, great place, but you want to talk about noise? Holy moly. And God forbid we put in an in and out there. So, you know, there's a lot of things that could go in that might make things a whole lot worse than a McDonald's that's there. So, you know, whether or not it's healthy, that's up to the people that want to inhabit that. So.
I think it works at Cherry Lane and 10 Mile. I think it works at Locust Grove and Fairview. I think it works well at State Street and Eagle Road. You know, it's the grocery stores seem to have a fast food component on the outside. It's not unusual for our community, whether you're on the south side of the freeway or the north side of the freeway. So in regard to our purview to vote on the conditional use permit, that they are following the rules of how it should be because it's near another drive-through, I think they are doing what they have asked, the city has asked them to do. So with that in mind, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number 2024-0044 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of October 17th, 2024, with no modifications.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve file number 0044. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll take one more motion.
Madam Chair. Move to
Commissioner
adjourn.
Smith?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?